Hi, I'm Melinda Van Fleet, and welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. I'm an author, speaker, and success coach who helps women believe in themselves, build confidence, and take action. In 2009, my husband Ryan and I were laid off at the same time, and we moved to the Florida Keys without jobs, not knowing anyone, hardly any money, and we never even been here. But we made it. And now, not every day is sunshine and rainbows, but we're living our best lives. All along in our journey, I've always said that someday when we get our shit together, we will help others. So each week, my intent is to be relatable and bring you tactical tips, tools, share my learnings and stories that can help inspire or transform you wherever you are in your career or general life and make an impact. I strongly believe that if I can do it, you can do it too. So what's stopping you? Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Good Karma Success Coach podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so excited. My skin is tingling, which is all good signs. I have a returning guest with me today, Joy Andreasen, and she was on podcast 110 back in January, which feels like eons ago, I guess 8 months ago now. And I am so excited. She has a new book, which I know she'll explain more about, Journey to Joy. And when she was on the podcast back in January, we talked about her other book, Whispers from Another Room. So real quick, Joy is a psychic, medium, a shamanic Reiki healer, and an author. And she has so much to share. It's just incredible. And I'm so glad to know her and call her a friend. So welcome back, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Oh my gosh. I am so excited. So I finished reading your book, Journey to Joy, and I had to laugh because you call all, taking in a lot of tools and guidance and even, books you've read and courses you've taken as cosmic soup.
Yes.
And I refer to the same type of thought processes and all that stuff in life and love lessons as the blender. So
yeah, there you go. Our guides have different words. They gave me that word like years ago because I was teaching classes every month, and every month would be something different. And so that's when I started calling my classes cosmic soup classes, because you never know what you were going to get that month.
Yeah, that was awesome. It made me smile so big when I read it, because I have to say, when I was writing my book and I was calling the blender, I was like, are people going to think I'm stupid? You kind of go through those things as a writer. And then I'm like, no,
you got to let go of all that. What are people going to think? At some point, you just have to say, this is who I am. Some people are going to like me. Some people aren't. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's taken a lot of work to get there. I'll be honest.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Oh, me too.
And I still have the little trickles, and I have to kind of swipe them away.
Exactly.
So before we dive in, I do really hope that people go back and listen to episode 110, and I'll put that in the show notes, because that's where Joy talked a lot about her background. She talked about soul retrieval, shamanism, Reiki, how to do an energy clearing, which is so important. And I do an energy clearing twice a day, and I make my husband do it with me sometimes when he's home. And we talked about, souls and after people pass, and all of that information is just so helpful to everyone out there. You can pick something from that podcast and really apply it. So please go check that out as well. I just think that if you haven't heard it already, or if you needed a refresher like I did, it will really benefit you, and you can apply something right away. So where should we begin?
Yeah, there's so much to talk about, isn't there? Oh
my gosh, I took tons of notes, and I just really loved your book. There's just so many great stories of healing, stories of helping others. I love how you even say, never discount different perspectives. You said that at the end, and it's so true.
Yes.
I think as we're going through this life together as humans, to really learn and embrace what we can from each other is so important.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we're here, is so that we can learn love and acceptance of people that are different from us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's one of the main themes that we as a collective need to resolve, because there's so many wars, so many fighting, so many people with different opinions about, politics and religion and different perspectives on life. And I think rather than to say, I'm right and you're wrong, I think it's important to have a conversation and look at other people's perspectives and say, well, I might not agree, but I can relate to how you came to that conclusion. I can relate to how maybe you inherited a belief that's not even yours and you just accepted it as your own. I mean, there's so many different variables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's true, because when you get into that space of whether you want to say it's judgment or name calling, it doesn't feel good. Like it just...
No, and it actually creates illness in your body.
Mm-hmm.
I had a client yesterday who came to see me about his health, and what it boiled down to was an ancestral judgment against another culture.
Wow.
And it wasn't even his, but he inherited it and he accepted it. And he had, judgment in his heart towards his other culture because of the way that his people were treated by this other culture. And so, I asked him, I said, well, do you want to be healthy? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, you're going to have to release this judgment towards this other culture. And he said, I don't know if I can. And I said, you might not be able to release it all in a half an hour session, but you can start on the process and be willing to open up to the possibility of releasing your judgment toward this other culture, even if what they did was horrible.
Mm-hmm. And how did he receive that?
He said he was open to it. I led him in a prayer, releasing judgment towards this other culture and being willing to open up to the possibility of letting go of the ancestral hatred, releasing it not only from his body, but from the energy field of his ancestors, because it was ancestral for many, many hundreds of years.
Wow. And how would you say, because if someone hears this and they're like, okay, I might have something,
mm-hmm.
and then they work with you.
Yeah. So a couple different things. And the cool thing is I'm actually writing a chapter about this for an upcoming book called The Ancestors Within, Volume 2. Mm-hmm. There's a Volume 1, which was a bestseller. So I'm hoping this one will be too. So I'm just writing one chapter, but this is what my chapter is about healing ancestral patterns and things that we often want to discard. Maybe some of our ancestors were not nice people, and so we disclude them from our family tree. And so that's damaging to our energy field. And so, so what I do, I have a couple of different processes that I do. I have statements that I lead. Statements or prayers. If you don't like the word prayer, you can say a statement, an intention, a declaration of intent. And I lead the client in this prayer, releasing judgments, releasing ancestral patterns, releasing limiting beliefs, trapped emotions out of their energy field and the energy field of their ancestors. And even their previous lives, because it could come, it could come from a lot of different places. And then after we release that, then I usually give them some sort of something to do. Like, for example, I had a client who needed to release anger towards her mother. I had a couple of those, actually. That's a pretty common theme. And so what I had them do is get something that represented their mother, like a picture or something of theirs, some kind of something that they had that belonged to their mother or whoever it is. And if you know something about them, like if you know what their favorite drink was or their favorite piece of cake or whatever, then give them a gift of that item, even if they're not there. Obviously, usually they're on the other side, and talk to them. And you can just let out everything that you felt and tell them that you're letting it go and you're forgiving them and you want to love and accept them, and just eat the piece of cake with them or drink a glass of wine with them. And that kind of creates a resolution. And I had a client yesterday who contacted me and she said, I just want to thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I did this ritual and I feel so much better. The anger is gone. The sadness is gone. The grief is gone. I feel so much better.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for that. I have done my own energy work on my own through my guidance and did that. But I also think it's really important for people to know that if it feels good for you to not have a relationship with them anymore or draw boundaries or limit the relationship.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't want people to think like,
I'm not saying you need to keep toxic people in your life. Yeah. No, I'm not saying that at all, because we're not condoning bad behavior at all.
Right. And some people are never
accepting them as our ancestor. So your mother is always going to be your mother, no matter how horrible she was.
Yep.
And she probably had reasons for being horrible.
Yes. And that is true, actually. I do.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean, I have a close family member that just decided to stop being in a relationship with her father. And I totally am in agreement with it because it was toxic. Mm-hmm. But, I told her, I said, he's still always going to be your father. So never completely annihilate that acknowledgement of him as the person who gave life to you.
Of course. Yep.
You don't have to be in a relationship with them. You don't have to condone bad behavior, but you always have to include them as an ancestor.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I do. I agree with that, because then when you're doing that from a place of love and forgiveness.
Yes. But also expecting, that people have to be responsible for bad behavior. They are responsible for their bad behavior. And if they have done things that are deal breakers in a relationship, then you certainly have the right to not have a relationship with them. But you're doing that because of their behavior, not because of who they are as a soul.
Right. Yep. Nope. You're absolutely correct. I love a part of your book. It's funny because I had something happen to me, or I should say that I did a couple of weeks ago, where you said about name calling. So kind of circling back on that a little bit, how you were in your car and you called someone an idiot, and then you made like an X in the air to kind of like delete it.
Yes.
Because you knew. Can you share a little bit about that? And then
oh my goodness. I am in the point in my life where I know you call your podcast and your business the Good Karma Success Coach. I believe in that wholeheartedly, karma. And for me, it's almost instant. Like if I'm driving down the road and somebody cuts me off in traffic and I call them a name, within 5 minutes, I cut somebody else off in traffic and I don't even know that I'm doing it. Like usually it's like, oops, I didn't see you there. And I realize, that's because I called somebody an idiot 5 minutes ago for cutting me off in traffic. So it's almost like, if I recognize it immediately, if I'm human, I get upset if somebody cuts me off or whatever. So if I notice myself doing it right away, I will make an X in the air and say, I'm sorry, I crossed that out. I'm sure you just didn't see me or you're just having a bad day. And I send blessings to you. If I don't, then something's going to happen back, like immediately, within the day, usually.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great tip, and it's really simple. I love simple tips. So I am going to adopt that. I've gotten really good at not name calling. That's why my story that I'm going to share in a second is really kind of funny. And I'm very cautious with Ryan in terms of been really kind of helping him with his mindset too around name calling. And we don't do it from like some evil place, but sometimes you'll say, hey, I'm just an idiot, right? So
sometimes it just comes out of your mouth and before you even know it, it's like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? I just meditated like 10 minutes ago. What's wrong with me? Totally. And it's because we're human.
I know. So that's like the crazy part is I'm so intentional about not name calling. So I was recording my other podcast a couple weeks ago and I was telling a story and I ended up calling the guy in the story a jerk. And I'm like, he was a jerk and he was a jerk. And so it just became this whole like mind loop of the jerk. And then I ended the podcast and I'm like, well, that's not really how I speak anymore. I don't name call, but I did that in the podcast. What does that mean? And then that became like a whole mind loop about the jerk in the podcast.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's really about behavior. It's like, okay, well, I can love somebody's soul without loving their behavior. Mm-hmm. And, we really have to realize that everybody's in their own space and they're living their life the best way that they know how. And that in that space, that person is doing what they think that they are supposed to do or they need to do. And we have to, realize that everybody's perspective is different. And for sure, if somebody's out there murdering people, then we don't need to condone their behavior, obviously. But we also need to realize that, they're a soul, and for whatever reason, they're being probably tormented by spirits that are helping them do what they do. And, everybody has to understand that everybody has a soul, and what they're doing with it is sometimes not good. But we need to separate ourselves from that energy by not being too judgmental.
Oh my gosh. Can I just give you a hug over this podcast? Oh my gosh. Okay. So number one, I truly believe that things that come through me are all lessons to be shared. It's in all of my charts. And so obviously this is what's coming through right now, is that what I did in that podcast was the lesson to be shared now with my conversation with you. So this gentleman that, it was his behavior was as of a jerk, which is where that came from. And even when I said it in the podcast, part of him letting us out of our contract, it was about a boat we used to own, was the fact that he was a jerk. And it was part of the whole way we got out of the contract. So I was like, I don't really feel bad calling him a jerk because he was a jerk. And that's how we ended up getting out of the contract, right?
Right,
so
right.
Further, which tags onto what you just said, is we knew that he had some darkness in him. Like we could feel it. My husband and I could feel it energetically that something just wasn't right with him. Yeah. And it all kind of went together with his behavior. So, so you just tied like a nice, pretty bow on the whole situation that my husband and I went through with him, because it totally makes sense. It is, you just nailed it. So thank you. And I hope that helps someone else out there. You don't have to go around calling people a jerk.
Well, yeah, but you have to realize people are going to reap what they sow.
Yeah.
And so people who are jerks are going to, in some way, have a life that is not the best. They're going to have challenges in life. And instead of, sometimes we only get on the tail end and see the challenges and we feel sorry for them. And then we're like, oh, poor so-and-so. But we don't realize what it is they might be reaping. And, a lot of times, especially when it's relatives or people that we have some sort of connection with, we want to enable that behavior or rescue them or whatever. And that means they're not suffering the consequences of their behavior. And so even sometimes we think we're doing the right thing by being kind to somebody who's having a challenge, but we really have to be led by spirit into whether to intervene or not, because it might be that somebody needs to go through a challenge, because sometimes spirit throws things in because you're not listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you need to take a different path, then your car might break down. Or if you need to, move, then maybe the electric's going to go off in the house continuously. And you've probably, if you know that it's time to move, but you've been resistant, you've probably known it for a while. And you're resistant for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden things start going wrong in the house, or maybe some drug addicts move in next door or whatever. And those are little pushes from the universe because you're not listening.
Yeah, no, that's so true. We had that when we first moved down here. We were at another condo building and all of these things just started like lining up. It was crazy. And then our landlord ended up putting a short sale on the unit. And it was just such divine timing of all these signals and all these things going wrong. It was like, And then we ended up in this place that we live in now, which is, you know, much bigger, better location, hurricane proof, like all these, you know, no neighbors really, just one neighbor next door, and they're nice people. So, so it is amazing. Sometimes you think that all these things are going wrong, but really you're just being led down a path to what is better for you.
Yes, because sometimes we're resistant to change. And, you know, sometimes Spirit's been telling us something for a while and we're resistant because we want to stay safe in our little box that we've created for ourselves. And in order for us to become the next best version of ourselves, we have to change. And if we're resistant to that change, yes, then things are going to start happening to push us towards that change. And sometimes they're not comfortable.
Yeah. And what's your thoughts on being tested? I feel like this year for me, my eyes have become open to being tested by Spirit. And there was a period of a few months where I was like, oh my gosh, another test. I was like, hey, give me a break.
I have a couple of thoughts on that. For one thing, you know, there are spiritual teachers who say that Earth is a school, that we're learning lessons. And if we are, and I think I have mixed feelings about that. I think that in some way, yes, we are learning lessons. And if we're in, say, for example, if we're in math class, how is the teacher going to know that we've learned the lesson if we don't get a test? So in a way, yes, I think, but I don't think it's some cosmic person in the sky with a big, you know, baseball bat hitting us over the head saying, you know, this is because whatever. I think that it's our soul testing us to see if we've learned the lesson. I think it's our higher self. And so I think that it comes from not some outside force separate from ourselves. I think that it's something that comes to us cosmically, but from our own soul.
Yeah. Okay. That's a cool way to look at it. I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you. So I have an interesting, I'd love to learn more about your friend Haley taught you how Hallie, sorry. Thank you about that. Hallie taught you how to read rocks.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about that? I think that's fascinating.
Sure. So, she was my go-to person in the beginning. She knew everything woo-woo. I knew nothing. And one day she lived out in the country. We're walking down and she says to me, I'm going to teach you how to read rocks. And so she says, I want you to just look in the woods and pick up a rock about the size of a grapefruit and just look at it and kind of see if it's the right one just by how you feel. And so I found a rock and she says, now I'm going to pose a question to you and you're going to look at the rock and see what you see. And so you kind of look at the crevices and the shadows and the things in the rock to get an answer to a question. And so her question was, I want to move. Tell me something about where I should move. What would be my next step? You know, what am I going to do? And so I picked up a rock and I looked at it and I saw images in the crevices of the rock that had something to do with moving and where she was going to move. And I don't remember now, it's been so many years ago, what I saw. But you know how, and she says, you can do this with clouds. You can, anything that has various nuances of color and shape and size that, you know how when you can look at something and say, you can look at a cloud and say, oh, that looks like a duck or that looks like blah, 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 or whatever. It's the same thing, only with rocks.
That's a cool analogy, like in terms of the clouds, because we do that.
We do it all the time. We look up at the clouds. Yeah. The other day, I looked up at the clouds. I still haven't gotten like what's going to happen, but I saw you hardly ever see sharp angles in the clouds. It's usually very, roundish. And so I saw 3 sides of a square. And, that's really odd. You never, and it wasn't like from planes, because sometimes it's the white things from planes. It wasn't that. It was actual clouds that were in three sides of a square, and the top of the square was open. And then to the side of it, I saw an angel, like a cloud that looked like an angel. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, the three sides of the house represent a house, and then the angel's looking toward the house. So I just put it on the back burner because I still don't know what it means, but it's the same thing with rocks. So sometimes you'll see something that means something in a rock, and usually it should, if you're reading rocks intentionally, it should be an answer to a particular question. And what you do is you have to use symbolism, because obviously you're not going to get, you should move to da 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 right. In writing. You're not going to get that. But you're going to get something that looks like something else that you then have to interpret to say, okay, well, this looks like this, so it must mean this.
Gotcha.
So it's actually just honing your ability to use symbols to get a message. And to do that, you kind of have to have what I call a symbol dictionary. And a symbol dictionary is where, I have certain things that mean certain things. And over time, I've created this kind of symbol dictionary to where this means this and that means that. For example, like Georgia peaches. If I get an image of a peach, I'm thinking, okay, well, it might be actual peaches, but it might indicate something in Georgia. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. And it is.
Yeah. So everybody's symbol dictionary is going to be different. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you don't have a symbol dictionary and you're trying to read a rock and you see, for example, a kangaroo, something that looks like a kangaroo, that could mean Australia, but it also could mean moving forward quickly, because they kind of hop and they have that little baby inside. So it means something that is developing inside of you that you need to move forward with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Similar, as I mentioned in my book, to like tarot, I had taken a mini tarot reading course. It's just an online course, and really looking at the cards to interpret, or oracle cards, either way.
For sure.
See all.
And I think like with tarot cards, it's the same thing. More so than knowing what each card means, it's looking at the picture and saying, okay, what does this picture look like? What am I feeling about this card? And what is it saying to me? And even if it's upside down, I'll look at what's upside down. Like today, I post a card of the day, and the card was the Six of Swords upside down. And so I saw all these birds flying, but they're flying underneath because the card's upside down. And so it had to do with communication being stalled. Well, that happened because the app that I used to post my card of the day stopped working.
Oh.
So I had to do it a different way. And because I always schedule my card of the day, I'm giving a little secret here. I don't get up at 6:30 in the morning and post my card of the day every day. I usually do them ahead of time. I pull cards and I get a message, and then I schedule them for usually 6:30 in the morning every morning. And I'm going to have to do it a different way now. So going back to what we were talking about, as far as when things happen, they're pushing you in a different direction. I have to re-examine. Do I still want to do the card of the day? Do I want to do it a different way? So that's what I'm taking it as a message of maybe my card of the day is going to shift.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. The message in it. That's what is.
So that one was for me, but I posted it anyway. If anybody else wants to take it, they can.
Yeah. Someone else might be like, oh yeah, that resonates with me too. I have a question about time.
Yes.
So we all know that the universe does not operate on time. That's a human construct. And you talk about that in your book.
Yes.
So, but that's also one of the biggest challenges we have as humans, is we want something to happen now or yesterday. So we're always curious about when something's going to happen. Yes. So I have found over the course of my journeys with having cards read or having a psychic reading that sometimes people give time.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Like, it doesn't seem to quite, connect with me. Like if the universe doesn't know time, how is a psychic telling you, oh, this should happen for you in the month of August? Like, what's your take on that?
Couple things. I believe that spirit gives us a roadmap on our journey through life. And the way I do it, some people do it through astrology. And even though I love astrology, I don't do it. I read what other people say. But I think of it as a roadmap. Like, you can look out for this at this kind of juncture in time. And the same thing, I do it with tarot and numerology. And so with numerology, you were born at a specific date and time. You came in with a specific vibration, and numerology kind of gives you a hint of when to expect certain things based on numbers. And so I can kind of, then I also use tarot cards. So I take whatever number is the theme for the month, and I look up that corresponding tarot card. And using those two tools, I'm able to kind of say, okay, well, the theme for this month seems to be this. And usually it's pretty accurate. It might be off a little bit, but normally it's pretty accurate. And so, yeah, I believe that, our souls know that we're living in time. And that sometimes we need to kind of have a roadmap to know, say, for example, if numerology is our spiritual GPS, if we have a regular GPS on and I need to be to a certain location at 5:00 in the evening, I'm going to look up the GPS and say, how long is it going to take me to get there? And is there any traffic? Are there any problems? And allow the GPS to take me and get me there. So numerology, tarot, astrology, those kind of things, that's like our GPS telling us, okay, you need to be at this location at 5:00. So you need to go through. And yet we, as souls, having free will, we can decide to ignore our GPS. And, then the GPS is going rerouting. And we might end up getting there at 7:00 or 8:00 because we decided not to follow the guide map. But we're eventually going to get there. And so, yes, we still have free will. We can decide whether to follow the directions of the GPS and go the way it says and get there at 5:00, or we can decide, I don't want to go that way. I think this is a better way to go. And we might still get there at 5:00. Who knows? We might not get there till 6 or 7:00, but we're still going to get there.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just think there's alternate ways that we can choose to live our lives. Some of them are, I think, when you get a reading and somebody says in 6 months you're going to be here, well, that's if you follow the GPS. If you decide to take a detour, you might not get there in this so many times. You might eventually get there. Or if you take a big detour, you might end up in Kansas and never get to where you're going. But that's where free will comes in. Yes, there are certain things where spirit wants you to be here at this certain time, but if you want to take a detour, that's up to you. You can even turn off your GPS and go whichever way you want.
And would you say that if you stop worrying about time, technically you should be working on like collapsing time?
I think our souls guide us more than we know. And sometimes something, we might be intent. I remember, as an example, years ago when I was married to my first husband, I wanted to move to Tennessee really bad. And so I tried to get a transfer to Tennessee. I did all these things to try to move there and just couldn't get it to work. Now, if I had moved to Tennessee, my life would have taken a whole different path. And so eventually, maybe I still would have, the same thing still would have happened, but they would have happened in a different way, in a completely different, who knows, I might not be doing what I'm doing now. And so the fact that the post office wouldn't transfer me was probably my guide saying, oh, no, you don't. This is not the way you're going to go. So, yeah, I think that we have free will, but on the other hand, if it's really against our soul's plan, then it's just not going to work out.
Yeah. And that's so true. When I think about different jobs that I interviewed for and thought I had it in the bag and then I didn't. I was like,
yeah, we always have to say, okay, well, maybe that wasn't in my best interest.
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Thank you. When I was reading your book and I wrote that down, I had the time question come to my head, and it's something I've worked dramatically on, like, and come from like negative to a much higher number. And I thought of the question, but then my intuition kicked in right away and said roadmap. So it's really wild that that's the word you use too, because it is. It's like this.
It is. It's a roadmap.
So
for sure,
a reader or psychic can kind of gauge the roadmap to help you. But then, yes, with your free will and with using your GPS, either ignoring it or, however you choose to look at it.
And I have a really cool tool now that I do with the cards and you can do it without the cards. You can do it however you want. But around December, the end of December, I'll pull a card for each month of the year, like January, February, and I'll write it down in a journal. So I'll have a card for January, and then I'll, at the end of the month, I'll write, okay, well, this happened or whatever. Every now and then I will get to the end of the month and say, I have no idea what this meant. It didn't resonate at all. It never happened. That happens occasionally. But then sometimes, say, for example, June, I'm like, I don't know what this card meant. One year I got a particular card and nothing happened that resonated with that card. But in November, I found out something that happened in June that was that card.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So like a delayed clarity.
It was a delayed clarity. Exactly. Oh, this happened in June, really? And I think it was the Three of Swords, which is a picture of a heart with three swords in it.
Uh-huh.
And, I was expecting, of course, the bad thing about doing that is if you get a card like that, you're expecting something really bad to happen.
Yeah, right.
And then at the end of the month, I'm like, well, that one was wrong. Nothing bad happened. But in November, I found out that my ex-husband had a heart attack that month.
Oh, wow.
Which didn't affect me personally, but it affected my daughter and everybody else. But nobody knew because he wasn't talking to anybody. So nobody knew until I guess he decided to come out of the woodwork and tell people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a lot. I mean, that's obviously a complete different instance. Oh, I actually had something like that yesterday. I'm going to encompass in a talk I have. But sometimes you have a conversation with someone and you can tell they're squirming, right? Yeah. And you don't really know what's going on. And then you learn later, or you figure it out later, that there's more to the story. And it's kind of in that same bucket with what you're saying with the tarot cards. Like sometimes you don't know, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, I get it now. So,
right.
Yeah, that's really wild. Well, I want to also talk about, now I call it I Ching, and that's from watching certain videos, and you said I Ching. I don't know if one is, if I've been saying
well, mine's probably wrong. I just bought a book when I was early on in my discovery process. When I first decided to leave my former belief system and just explore every path and see, I just wanted to know what everybody believed and just kind of take what I liked and leave the rest behind. I was in Books A Million. I think it was Books A Million. I was looking on the bargain book table because I was poor. and so I found this, what I call I Ching. It's probably I Ching book on the table. And I was like, oh, that looks interesting. So I just bought the book. It was $4 and I took it home and I read it. And I went and got me some coins and just started using it. And every single time I asked a question or I threw the coins, it was like 100% accurate, totally accurate.
Wow.
Yeah. So I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody taught me. I just got a little bargain book. And I think, the lesson in that is tools are for us. And any tool you use can work, whether you know what you're doing or not, because it's resonating with your soul and it's resonating with the way that your soul and your guides talk to you. And so over the years, I got a little lazy with the coins and I'm like, I just don't feel like throwing the coins. I'm just going to get the book, randomly open to a page and see what it says. And it was still accurate.
And I think I'm going to do it that way.
Yeah, because, it can be complicated because then there's the changing aspect and the this is going to happen in the future, but this is the way it is now. And I mean, it can get complicated, but I'm like the simplified version person. I want simple. That's why I never really studied astrology, because it seemed complicated. And my guides had to really, really like beat me over the head to study tarot, because I was not interested. I'm like, 78 cards, really? I have to memorize what all these means. And then I have to look and see how they relate to each other. That's just too complicated. And yet they just wouldn't leave me alone. And they're like, you really need to study these. And I did. And they taught me. I never took a class. I just meditated and they taught me.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm like you, I don't have the attention span for a ton of details. So I kind of like to.
Right. And that's why I just started doing it intuitively. I would look at the picture and then I would look at the other pictures around in the spread and say, okay, well, this looks like this and this looks like that. And this is what I gather from this information. Over time, because I've been doing it a long, long, long time.
Sure.
I've learned both the universal meanings and the intuitive meanings, and I have certain cards that always mean certain things. And even like the president, when there's an election, I'll pull a card for that particular, whoever's running. And they usually end up, that card means something. Like Biden, I pulled, I think it's the, which one is it? 9 or 10 of Pentacles, where there's older person sitting with 2 dogs sitting by his side, and it ended up Biden has 2 dogs.
Oh my gosh. Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, for anyone out there that doesn't know what the I Ching is, I had bought a couple books. I don't even know how I ended up buying these books, and I'll put them in the show notes. And they sat on my shelf, to be really honest, because sometimes I buy books because it just comes across my path, or I feel called to buy them, but I might not have time to read them yet. So I bought these books, and as I'm studying human design and gene keys, the I Ching has some basis in those 2 assessments tools, however you want to refer to them. So when I then was like, I need to pull out these books and see what they're about, I thought it was going to be like Kabbalah or Buddhism or Bhagavad, I can never say it out loud, Bhagavad Gita. And sorry, I just messed that up. And it's not, it's an oracle. So I was blown away because I was like, oh, this was not what I was expecting. Which is why I love to learn so many different things. And I know you're the same way. So when I was reading Joy's book and she said she actually uses it and applies it, I was like, dang, that's really cool, because there is a whole, methodology to tossing the coins and writing down the lines and seeing how the lines break and line up, and then looking in the book for the meaning. So it's very similar to tarot as far as like an experience, and you're supposed to, use it to guide you. And it's a very, very, very old way of looking for advice. So I just thought it was really, really cool. So I'm going to do what Joy says and open the book and just see what I get, because tossing the coins right now isn't
and I will say my guides have kind of honed that a little bit, because our tendency, this is our natural tendency, to open somewhere in the middle of the book. Very seldom will we open really early, really in the front or really in the back. We have a tendency to always go towards the middle. So sometimes the random thing doesn't work. So sometimes what I do, this is something new, I'll meditate, I'll hold the book, and I'll ask for a number, a page number.
Oh.
And then I'll go to that page number and read.
Gotcha.
So that's another way to do it. Okay. Because, my guides say, well, the random thing is okay, but you're always going to tend to migrate towards the middle of the book.
Oh, gotcha.
And so that kind of leaves out a lot of, just because of our brains and the way they work, we're just always going to migrate somewhere towards the middle. So, and that's why they do the coins and the more complicated stuff. But, it's just as easy to meditate if you're good at this. Some people aren't good at that. So you have to do it whatever way you're good at and just meditate. I know the other day, my mother, she's on the other side. and I was meditating, and she came in, which is rare. She very rarely comes in. And she wanted me to go to her Bible that she had when she was alive and go to a particular page and read what it said. And so I did. And that was a message from my mother.
Oh, wow. And what do you mind sharing? Now
I don't remember. It had to do with something that I was going to be dealing with a client that day. Like she came in to help.
Gotcha.
And I'm trying to remember now what it was. It had to do with a prophecy in the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. There was a prophet, and he was given a message, and he gave a message to the king, and it was David, I think. The prophet came and gave a message to David. Oh, I know. Okay, as I talk, I'm remembering. It's when God, through a prophet, came to David and told him that he was going to be king. So it was early on in his thing. And then it says, and then David went out and slayed 50,000 Palestinians and 40,000 this and 50,000 that. And I'm like, I don't resonate with that. You know, I don't resonate with the fact that there is a God who's okay with killing other groups of people. I'm just not okay with that.
Yeah.
And so, but the message was it was about prophecy and about how you're guided in a particular direction toward your destiny. So that's what the message was about. But, the whole page didn't resonate. So when I got to the part, where it says, and then David went out and did all this, and I'm like, I don't really go for that. I think that, the real divine being doesn't kill other people and doesn't tell other people to kill other people. I just don't believe that. So then I was like, okay, well, that part of the story I don't really resonate with, but I resonate with the part about listening to spirit and guiding you and telling you something about what's going to happen in the future. And then you taking that information and moving forward in the decisions you make in life.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's cool. And sometimes you do have to sit with it and let it resonate with you.
And let it, say, okay, well, I don't like this part. What are you actually saying to me?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So one more thing I want to ask you about is the number 8.
The number 8 came to me when I was still my good little born again Christian girl person. And I was going to a Pentecostal holiness camp here in Virginia. And when you go there, it's very cool. They will give a message to anybody through the gift of prophecy. They're a camp of prophets. And you go in there, and if you get in line and stand in line long enough, you're going to get a message. And so then they preach, and do all this stuff. And I really got a lot of help at that time because the messages were kind of leading me on the path that I ended up taking. And they didn't know that, obviously. But one preacher got up and talked about the number 8 and in the Bible. And in biblical numerology, 888 is the number of Jesus. His name adds up to 888. And then he talked about there's 7 days in a week, and the 8th day is the number of new beginnings. So that's the way in Bible terms they interpret the number 8. That 8 is the number of new beginnings because of the 7 days in a week. 8 is the next day after that. And so I took it. I was like, 8 is my favorite number now because I needed a new beginning. And it ended up, you read in my book, there was a huge new beginning for me. It didn't happen overnight, but that became my favorite number. And that's why I decided to make my changes on August 8th. I didn't know that was the Lionsgate portal and all of that. I didn't learn that till years later. But 8 is the number for me. And then in numerology, traditional numerology, 8 is the number of empowerment, self-empowerment, power, and money. And so money and power. And I didn't really resonate with, I'm not all about, amassing large amounts of money. I like to be comfortable. But the part I like about it is self-empowerment. Mm-hmm. And so being your best self and letting go of this need that I always had to make sure everybody else was okay and putting me last. And that's why I stayed in an unhappy marriage for all those years. That's why I stayed in the church, because I thought, I have to give my life in service to others just like Jesus did. And so I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm saying that at some point you have to put yourself in there somewhere. and my day of self-empowerment was August 8th. So that's a big number for me.
Yeah, I just think
and then, the universe just worked in mysterious ways. I went out on my very first date with my current husband on October 8th. And that's something I couldn't have orchestrated intentionally. And then when I did get my divorce from my first husband, it was final on December 8th. So that 8 number is a theme. Like, important things always happen to me when there's an 8 vibration.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I was like laughing because I was reading about the number 8. I haven't been someone who's been really into numerology. My favorite number is 7, and 407 is my birthday and was my first apartment after I graduated from college. So that is a reoccurring number for me that I see. But overall, it hasn't really been something I've had a huge calling to, at least at this moment in my life. So when I was reading your book about 8, and then you posted your blog about 8, and then I looked at the calendar and I went, oh my gosh, this podcast is going to come out on 8/8. I was like, wow, talk about divine timing. So
see, I told you, important things always happen on an 8 day for me.
I just, it made me smile. It's making me smile right now. I just think that's just so fun. And
Yes. And well, my birthday is January 17th. So the middle number 7 and 1 equals 8.
Yeah, totally. That's great.
Yeah. So, which I didn't connect at the time. When I decided 8 was my favorite number, I didn't know anything about numerology.
Yeah. Wow.
That was like way, way back.
Yeah. Wow.
I just knew I needed a new beginning.
Yeah.
And that's all I knew.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really cool. I love it. It's just fun. So if you're into numerology out there, or have a little bit of a spark now created within you to venture down that path, keep us posted. That'll be fun
Yeah.
to hear what transpires. So, oh my gosh, I could talk to you forever.
You're very easy to talk to, Melinda.
Oh, thank you. I just love you and talking to you. And I love your books. And I really hope that people go out. Joy's stories are so amazing. She shares so much, and obviously lots of tips. I mean, even, I wrote a page of things that are obviously the little topics I picked for this podcast. So when you read the book, you can learn even more. And how should people connect with you? Because I know you have readings that you can do. So feel free to share whatever you feel like sharing.
Sure. So my website is whispersofjoy.net, and you can find out all kinds of things about me. I write a blog. There's links to both of my books, and you can you can schedule an appointment. I do appointments in person here in Winchester, Virginia, but I also do Zoom and phone. So I have clients all over the place. And my little spiffy little booking calendar even takes time differences into account for when you book your appointment. So that's all worked out for you. You don't have to think, okay, where is it and what time is it in Virginia? So that's really cool. I do have a chapter of a book, I'm going to be in a chapter of a book, an upcoming book called The Ancestors Within, Volume 2. I'm really excited about that. I'm not doing a lot of those events like those psychic fairs and stuff like that because I'm just busy enough doing things the way I'm doing them. So, just look on my website and find out what you're interested in. I have a blog on almost any subject you can think of.
Yeah, no, your blogs are always fascinating, and you do cover a wide range of topics that encompass spirituality. So I do highly recommend to sign up for Joy's email list so you can get her blog and follow her on Facebook too, where you post it as well. So
yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it was really nice talking to you, and hopefully we'll connect again soon.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much.